Thank you. Oh, wow. It's such a pleasure for me to be here today, seeing these beautiful faces. You know, it's not so often that we see people who value conservationists like us. So that's why I want to run and hug every one of you, but we'll do that after my presentation. So today I want to talk to you about a place and a species that are very important to me. Lake Osa. And they are very important. They're very important to me also because they're going through challenges that I've been trying to solve. And I hope today maybe you'll be able to help me do that. Lake Osa is a 4,000 hectares lake that inhabits a lot of species, and especially the African manatee. And it's important to me because this is where my career as a marine biologist started. It's also in this place that I observed the African manatee for the very first time. How many of you have heard about the African manatee? Oh, that's not bad. But how many of you have seen the African manatee in the wild? Really? Well, I feel like I need to invite you in Cameroon so that you can be able to see your first African manatee in the wild. But how many of you have seen the Florida manatee or heard of it? Oh, wow. Well, the African manatee is pretty much similar to the Florida manatee. The only difference that the Florida manatee is a little bit larger. But do you know why the Florida manatee is larger than the African manatee? Do you want to know? Okay, I'll tell you. So the African manatee is a little bit slender because they live in this hardship area of Africa where they are constantly running away from poachers that try to kill them for their meat. Whereas the Florida manatee, they live in this beautiful country of the United States of America, enjoying the hamburgers and the donuts. Well, no, this is not true. But the reality is that the Florida manatee are a little bit larger because they live in this area where the cold winter forces them to hibernate in this warm water spring where they will stay there weeks without food. So they need this extra layer of fat, in order to, as a reserve for energy, but also to insulate themselves from the cold. Whereas the African manatee, as you can see on this map, the African manatee, they live in a tropical area, around the west coast of Africa, where it's always summer. So they don't have to, to hibernate, or they don't need so much fat, to insulate from the cold. And there are 3 species of manatees. The African manatee, as I show you, are around here, but you also have the West Indian manatee that include 2 subspecies, including the Florida manatee, that are in this pink area. And you have the Amazonian manatee that lives in the Amazon. Lake Osa is also a home for other species, like marine mammals, reptiles, but also a lot of birds, like this pie kingfisher, and I'm going to make the bird excited here. And then you have the long-tailed cormorant, and before that, I missed one, oops, the little egret, the yellow-billed kite, the palm-nut vulture, and then also you have the African soft-shelled turtle. And within this Lake Osa Mother Lake Osa is also so kind because she provides food for the many fishermen, about 300 fishermen that lives in the lake, and the 17,000 local community that are around this lake. And there are about 36 species of fish that are present here. But unfortunately, in this lake, the fishermen that are here, when I started my conservation work in Lake Osa in 2009, most of these fishermen was killing the manatee as a retaliation for their net that they claim manatee has destroyed. So, and there was a lot of restaurants selling manatee meat. So we had to respond to that. And that's why in 2010, I founded the African Marine Mammal Conservation Organization, AMMCO, and with my team, we have been implementing conservation actions such as raising awareness, but also providing alternative livelihood to this community. And today, there is no restaurant providing manatee meat around Lake Osa. So as we are about to celebrate this success, conservation success, another threat arises. So what you see on the screen here is not a playing ground. It's actually an invasive plant called Salvinia molesta that started spreading over this lake in 2017 and covered almost 50% of the lake surface in 2021. The African manatee, they live on the water, so they spend most of their time on the water, and they only surface when they want to breathe. And actually, the picture you just saw is a manatee not in the natural habitat. It's in an aquarium. This is how you see the manatee when they are in their natural habitat, because the water is always murky and the manatee is shy. But we have to use the opportunity as the surface to breathe in order to observe them. But how will manatee be able to breathe when this plant covering the surface of the lake is preventing them from surfacing? So the Salvinia has been a problem both for the African manatee but also for the people. This is how the lake used to look like when there was no manatee, when there was no Salvinia. There was a lot of this plant. This plant is called Echinochlora pyramidalis. It's the antelope grass, the favorite food of the African manatee in Lake Osa. But when Salvinia came, it multiplied quickly and started choking down. The consequence of this is that there has been the increase that we were observing of the African manatee between 2015 and 2017, when we were implementing the conservation action, stopped, and we start seeing a drop of the population in Lake Osa because of the increase of Salvinia. And that has also impacted the fish population that start collapsing, impacting the local community who doesn't have enough food for their family. So in response to that, many of them started going into the forest around the Lake Osa, chopping down the trees, burning down for agricultural purposes, and which further even increased the amount of nutrient into the lake through runoff. And this nutrient increasing also increased more Salvinia. So in response to that, together we mobilized the local community to organize what we call a manual removal, where we train the community on how to remove this plant and transform it into what we call ecological charcoal. But this method was not enough to address the problem because the Salvinia molesta double in biomass every 8 to 10 days. So we have to find another herb, this tiny insect called the Salvinia weevil that feeds specifically on the Salvinia. So right after my PhD defense at the University of Florida, I flew directly at the Louisiana State University to meet some experts in biological control. They trained me how to macerate those weevils, and 2 days later, I was taking thousands of weevils to Cameroon in order to release them into the lake. It wasn't quite easy because it took about 1.5 years to the government to accept this approach, because it was the first time that this was being implemented. And the local community was also very skeptical about it because they think that the weevil will bite them or even will destroy their plants, but none of that happened. But we finally received the authorization and we released the weevil. And this is how the lake used to look like before we released the weevil. So it was all green and fresh and fleshy, and there were almost no manatee during this time. But 6 months later, this is how it started looking like. The weevil was killing the Salvinia, and it was browning. You can see how the browning is expanding. And in 2022, most of the lake was brown like this. This is how the lake looked like in 2020 before we introduced the weevil. And just a few days ago, I went back to the same site and I took this picture. Thank you. As a result of that, we start seeing more manatee coming back, but also more fish coming back also for the happiness of the local community. But as we were about to also celebrate this success, we realized that it's too soon. Why? Because we addressed the symptom and the root cause of the problem was still unaddressed. And this was nutrient pollution. The lake is connected to a river, the largest river of the country. On this river, there have been a lot of human activity at the industrial level, degrading the landscape through the construction of dams, reservoir dams like this. And while constructing this reservoir dam, they flooded 500 kilometers square of forest, equivalent to the size of the state of California. And by doing this, these plants will die and release their nutrient into the water, and which will then flow downstream and contaminate the lake. And there's also other agricultural practices that is even increasing the concentration of nutrient. So that's why with my team, we've been working along the Sanaga River and Lake Osa in order to monitor the quality of the water in order to understand where are those nutrients coming from mostly. And with the data, we've used that to, to advocate for a policy reform through an event that we call the Street Manatee. And outside you will see T-shirt of this event, and where we gather different stakeholders within this watershed to discuss about the issue related to this area. And when we gathered this, and as we gathered them, we presented them the problem, but we also discussed about the solution. So now they know exactly what to do, but we need to know our own part. So that's why with your support, we will be able to restore the forest around the lake. We are also going to monitor the African manatee and understand the impact of nutrient pollution on their health and also on their population. But we are also going to be able to provide more alternative livelihood to the local community and maybe even construct a manatee rehabilitation center, the first one in the entire continent, where we will be able to rehabilitate injured manatee and also orphan manatee. And this action will benefit all of us. Through this action, you'll be able to come to Cameroon, and I hope you will come soon, and be able to see this animal in the wild for the very first time. And the local community will be so thrilled to welcome you, guide you through the lake, and host you, and maybe get some dollars from you. Because this is how they will understand what I've been telling them, that a live manatee is worth than a dead manatee. And finally, the African manatee will be forever grateful and will remember you. Thank you.